My name is Madison. I'm 28 years old, living in Chicago and working in senior financial consulting. People often call me the steady one, the girl who holds it together when the whole family starts to fall apart. And I guess that's fair. I'm the one who paid off my brother's tuition after he lost his scholarship for partying. The one who took on over 60,000 of debt my dad had blown on shady investments, and the one who quietly covered every one of my mom's credit card bills even though she's never once asked if I was doing okay. I used to tell myself, family is family, no matter what you keep trying. But over time, that definition started to suffocate me. Last week, I got a text from my mom. Dear, Madison, come by the house at 600 tonight. We have something special for you. For some reason, my fingers froze on the screen. Something special from my mother. Ellen usually meant trouble. The last time she said something like that, the whole family had gathered to get me to co-sign a loan for Logan's new startup, just a few months after his last company went under. I sat in my car parked in front of the 2-story suburban house I'd helped pay for 4 years ago. Of course, it was under my parents' names, through the warm yellow light in the windows. I could see people moving around, hear the muffled laughter. I stepped out, adjusted my coat, and rang the doorbell. The door opened, and there was my mom, fully made up, bright red lipstick eyes sparkling a little too much. Surprised, she squealed, pulling me in. The living room was packed with relatives I hadn't seen since Christmas 2 years ago. Uncle, Henry, Aunt, Joan, even my cousin, Daphne, who only ever shows up when there are gifts or cash. Everyone shouted in unison, "Happy early birthday, Madison." I smiled, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, wow, you guys really got me," I said, though the only thing I felt was suspicion. My mom guided me to the couch in the middle of the room, and my dad quickly handed me a cocktail. "Your favorite?" "Green apple gin," he grinned from ear to ear. "I've hated gin since I was 25. "Sit down, sweetheart," my mom said gently, though. I noticed her eyes flick toward the side table where a leather-bound folder sat neatly as if waiting. I sat down and glanced at the first page, Asset Allocation Agreement, Evelyn Bennett Inheritance Trust. I tilted my head. "What's this, Mom?" "Oh, just some boring paperwork," she said, quickly placing her hand on mine. "Let's look at it later, sweetheart. Tonight is for celebrating." I smiled, but my hand was already reaching for the documents. "Actually, I'd like to look now if that's okay." The room suddenly went still. My dad stood up awkwardly, raising his glass. A toast to Madison, the brightest star of the family, he said, voice slightly rushed. I flipped to the first page. My eyes stopped at one sentence. I, Madison, Claire, Bennett, hereby relinquish all rights to the Evelyn Bennett Inheritance Trust. I looked up at my mother. "Mom, what is this?" She forced a smile. "Just a formality, honey. It's for tax purposes." "For tax purposes or transferring everything to the family without telling me?" I asked, voice calm, but eyes locked on hers. "Madison," Logan cut in, "please just sign it. Everyone's already agreed." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "So this is the real reason for the surprise birthday party." My mom clenched her hands. The smile disappeared. "Don't make a scene, everyone's here." I closed the folder and placed it on my lap, then let everyone hear it. They deserved the truth. I looked around the room, familiar faces that suddenly felt so foreign, and I knew this night would be the beginning of something entirely different. I was still sitting there in the living room. I used to know so well, but now felt like a stranger's home. The air was so thick. I could hear my heartbeat in my chest. The folder was still in my lap, the leather cover slightly bending where my fingers dug into it. No one said a word. Every pair of eyes had one thing in common: avoidance. Logan stared at the floor, fingers interlaced tightly. Daphne was tapping away on her phone like any notification was more important than this. My mother. Ellen still wore that forced smile, but I could see the unease behind her eyes. I turned to my dad. Even he looked uneasy. "Dad, Mom, why would you do this if this was really about Nana's estate? Why not just talk to me honestly?" My mother cleared her throat, then walked closer, voice syrupy but sharp. "Sweetheart, I know you always worry too much, but this isn't a big deal. I just thought if the inheritance were under our management, it'd be more convenient. You don't really need more money, do you? You already have everything." I let out a dry laugh. "Convenient for who?" "Mom, why trap me like this at a party you called a surprise?" I thought. I was family, not a financial asset. A growly voice spoke from the corner. "Sienna, that's enough." It was my Uncle Ray. "You're making everyone uncomfortable. Really." I turned to him then. "I guess. I should apologize for not signing away the last legal tie I have to my grandmother. Awry, my best friend, stepped up beside me. I hadn't noticed she was there, but now she was eyes steady, ready if I needed her. Sienna. My mom snapped, the smile gone now. Don't turn this into a drama. I stood up, lifting the folder with 2 fingers like it might stain. The thing is, Mom, you wrote the script, and I unfortunately refused to play the part. I walked to the dining table, gently placed the folder down, then looked up at every face in that room. Nana. Evelyn left everything to me because she knew, and tonight you all proved she was absolutely right. Silence. I turned to Awry. Can we go? She nodded. But before I reached the door, my mother called out, If you don't sign, there will be consequences. Sienna. I turned back and looked her straight in the eye. I've lived with consequences my whole life. Mom, now, I choose clarity, and I walked out of that house. Not with tears or anger, but with awareness. Avery's car glided quietly down the street lined with golden lights. I leaned back. My heart still rattled from everything that had just happened. You okay? She asked softly. Not yet, but I will be, I answered, staring out the window. Awry was silent for a while, then murmured, Your grandma must have seen this coming. I nodded. Yeah, I think she left something more behind, not just money. Maybe a video, a letter, a way to expose them. Awry gently squeezed my hand. Then it's your turn now. I held her hand tightly, then nodded. Tomorrow, I'm meeting Nana's lawyer. We stopped at a small lakeside cafe where the golden lights shimmered across the rippling water like a sheet of glass. Reen sat down 2 cups of hot tea while I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder my mother had tried to get me to sign. I flipped through the pages again, this time slowly, making sure. I didn't miss a thing. It wasn't just the inheritance waiver. There were attachments too, a temporary power of attorney and a financial reallocation sheet which clearly stated that nearly 100 of my grandmother's assets would be transferred to a new trust, one managed by my parents. Awry looked at me, her expression darkening. They weren't planning to give you a single dollar. I nodded. Not only that, they planned to use my name to make it all look legal. If I signed this, I'd basically be handing them the keys myself. She bit her lip, thinking, What about your grandmother's lawyer? You said you were going to reach out. I pulled out my phone and reopened the last message my grandmother, Evelyn, had sent me just a week before she passed. Dear Sienna, if things ever start to feel confusing, go see my attorney. Mr. Gerald. Price. I left some things for you. I called the office first thing the next morning. A professional-sounding woman answered and scheduled an appointment for 1000 a.m. I arrived 10 minutes early, heart pounding in my chest. The office was inside a classic red brick building in downtown Boston, with large windows facing the park. Gerald. Price was a calm, silver-haired man in his early 60s. He greeted me with a firm handshake and invited me into a room lined with law books. On the desk sat a thick envelope bearing my name, carefully sealed Mrs. Evelyn left a private video recording for you, he said, opening a drawer and taking out a USB drive. She also left additional documents related to the original trust, which your family is now trying to restructure. I took a deep breath. The video can. I watch it now? He nodded, then plugged the USB into his computer. The screen lit up and a familiar voice filled the room, slow, warm, slightly frail with age, but still sharp. Sienna, if you're watching this, then things are unfolding just the way I feared. I sat upright, eyes locked on the screen. You've always been kind, the only grandchild who never asked for anything. That's why. I want to protect you. I saw how your mother treated others, even me. Using family as an excuse to take advantage, all in the name of sacrifice, I left you everything, not because you needed it, but because you deserve it. My hands clenched, eyes burning, the screen switched to the trust's original terms. It clearly stated, if there was any attempt to force the heir to forfeit their rights, all assets would be automatically redirected to the charitable organizations she had named. Your family is unaware of this clause, Mr. Price said. But if you give the word, I can activate it today. I looked at him and this video. I have a copy, of course. He handed me a fresh USB, and there's one more recording. It's meant for the family. I took the device, heart pounding with mixed emotions. But then a plan began to take shape. I think it's time the whole family watched the video together. Awry met me in the parking lot. I told her everything on the ride back. When I mentioned the video, her eyes lit up. You're going to show them. I nodded. Tonight. I'm hosting a small get-together right at that house, so your surprise party becomes their surprise twist. I smiled. And this time, I'm the one writing the script. Once everyone was there, I'd play the video in front of them all. And if anyone still tried anything shady, that clause transferring 100 to charity was still waiting. They had no idea, but I knew better than ever that they were the ones being tested. That evening, I sent out a short round of texts. Mom, I've thought it over. Tomorrow, I'm inviting everyone to my apartment at 5:00 p.m. I'd like to resolve everything peacefully. The reply came almost instantly. Sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. I'm so glad we'll all be there. I didn't even need to read it carefully. I knew my mother. Ellen Langston never turned down a gathering where she thought she might win. Avery helped me rearrange the living room. I borrowed a mini projector from the office and mounted it on a shelf facing the sofa. The wall would be the screen clean and unobstructed. I took one last look around the room, then placed the USB with Nana, Lewis's message, next to the computer. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was because I knew after today nothing would be the same again. At exactly 5:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. My mother was the first one through, wearing a soft beige dress, her hair carefully styled and heels clicking like she was walking a runway. "Where's Madison?" she asked the moment she crossed the threshold. Calling me by the middle name only she still used when she wanted to remind me. "I gave birth to you." "I'm the one who invited everyone," I said, as I stepped out calmly. "Please come in." My dad came in next, followed by Uncle, Ray, Aunt, Linda, and Logan, who looked visibly nervous. I offered them seats, then walked over to the projector. "I'd like to share something," I said, voice low but clear enough to hush the room. I plugged in the USB. The screen lit up, and there she was, Nana, Evelyn. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, her sharp eyes focused, and her voice just as soothing as those summer afternoons when I'd listened to her tell stories as a child. "If you're watching this, it means Sienna refused to sign anything you brought her." I heard a small shift from where my mother sat, but she said nothing. "I've established a trust that cannot be changed. Everything I left belongs to Sienna, the only grandchild who never demanded, never manipulated, and never disappointed me." Logan looked down. My mother shifted in her seat. My dad stared at the screen in disbelief. "This trust has 3 clear conditions. 1, it's to be used only for personal living expenses, housing, health, or education. 2, it may be invested in independent ventures with no family ties. 3, it can be donated to verified charities." I glanced at my mother. She was staring at me not with anger but panic if any family member tries to coerce. "Sienna to give up her inheritance, or Sue's to claim it. 50 of the funds will be immediately transferred to the 4 named nonprofits." The silence. I shut off the projector. "I know that yesterday you planned for me to sign away everything, but I also know that wasn't Nana's wish. And I'm no longer the naive child you could push around." My mother shot up, voice trembling. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Everything I did was for you, really?" I asked quietly. "For me, or because you were afraid that if I held the inheritance you'd no longer have access to solve your own problems with my money?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Sienna, this is family. We share everything." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I've shared enough. This time. I'm keeping what's mine." I pulled a copy of the trust conditions from the envelope and placed it in the center of the table. Nana saw all of this coming. "And if anyone in this family still plans to break that trust, just know every action has a consequence." My mother clutched her purse, her eyes darting lost. "You'll regret this. One day you'll need us." I nodded slowly. "Maybe, but today, I need something else. Respect. And I'm not trading that for any amount of money." Then I opened the door. "This meeting is over." My apartment was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I looked at the USB on the table. It didn't just hold a will. It held my grandmother's trust in me that I could make my own choices and that I was worthy of doing so. And if they still tried to flip the board again, they'd learn. I already had my next move ready. The next morning, I sat alone in my small kitchen next to a cold cup of coffee, Nana, Lewis's. USB was still in my coat pocket, but in my hand was a thick folder personally given to me by attorney. Gerald after our first meeting. Your grandmother was meticulous, he had said, handing me the clearly labeled documents year by year. She kept records of every financial transaction involving your family. From credit cards opened in your name back in college to disguised money transfers labeled as medical expenses. I had no idea how long. I sat there flipping through each page. Bank statements printed transcripts of audio recordings, but by the time I folded the last paper, I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't just defending myself, I was telling the truth. 2 days later, I called my father to meet just him. No mom, no, Logan. We met at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn where he used to take me for pancakes when I was a little girl, but there was no family breakfast today, just a reckoning. My father, Richard. Langston was 10 minutes late. He walked in with a sheepish smile. Sorry, traffic, but thanks for meeting me. I nodded, motioned for him to sit, then placed a thick envelope on the table. I didn't invite you to reconnect. I asked you here to be clear about a few things. He looked at the envelope, frowning. What is this? I slid it toward him. Documents, loans you took out under my name, credit cards Mom opened, but drained from my student account, and records of the times you both asked for money to help. Logan. That ended up in Mom's personal account in Florida. He chuckled nervously. You've got it all wrong, Sienna. It was all for the family. Everyone does this. I looked him dead in the eyes. For the family, do you know that when I was 21, I worked 3 jobs to pay off that credit card debt while you were in Atlantic City gambling it away? His face froze. I continued, voice calm. Do you remember when Mom called me crying, saying Logan had been in a car accident and needed $8,000 for surgery? I pulled out a printed bank statement. 2 hours later, that money went to a car dealership in Miami where she bought a good deal on a used Range Rover. Where did you hear that? He stammered. I slid over another paper, a recording of her conversation with the seller. Nana kept it. She knew. She always knew. My father leaned back, wiping his face. For the first time, he wasn't the composed man. I remembered. He looked like someone losing control of the game. What do you want? He asked, no longer pretending to be calm. I crossed my arms. Not money, not an apology, just this. Stop! He squinted. From now on, you and Mom don't touch a cent of my inheritance. No more phone calls begging, no more fake emergencies, no more accidental account numbers from Logan. I leaned forward, voice firm. If anyone in this family tries to access the trust again, I'll file charges, and I have everything ready to go to the IRS or the Financial Crimes Unit. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. And one more thing. I know you're looking to hire another lawyer to challenge the will, but the trust clause is very clear. If there's coercion or legal dispute, 50 of the assets go straight to charity. I stood gathering my documents. So if you want to call Mom to strategize, go ahead. Just know every wrong move will cost you half. He stared at me, trying to gauge whether I really meant it. I gave a slight smile. You taught me how to play chess, remember? Sacrifice the pawn to protect the queen. Looks like you chose the wrong piece this time. I walked out of that cafe without looking back, and for the first time in years, my steps felt weightless. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming control over my own life, something they never thought I'd be brave enough to do. On Monday morning, I arrived attorney Gerald Price's office at 8:45 a.m. The family meeting was scheduled for 900, and I wanted to be the first one there, not out of politeness, but to double-check it that everything was ready. The conference room was perfectly prepared, the projector had been tested, and the hardbound documents were neatly arranged on the table. On the screen was the paused opening frame of the final video Nana, Evelyn, had recorded. Her stern face, eyes fierce behind her glasses, Gerald entered carrying another thick folder. Everything's in place, and as requested, all financial evidence has been printed and clearly marked. I nodded. Good. No pleasantries when they get here at exactly 900 a.m. I amming. The door opened. My mother, Ellen, walked in first, followed by my father, Richard, and Logan. They dressed like it was a boardroom meeting. Mom in a slate gray blazer, Dad wearing his signature red tie, his power tie as he called it. Logan said nothing, hands stuffed in his pockets, avoiding my eyes. Gerald began. Thank you all for arriving on time. We're here to watch the final video left by Mrs. Evelyn Olson and to disclose the final terms of the estate and company shares. My mother scoffed lightly. I hope this one isn't as theatrical as that surprise video at her house. I didn't reply. I just hit play. The screen lit up and Grandma's voice rang out firm and clear. If you're watching this, then things have gone exactly as I expected. Ellen, Richard. I know everything you've done from unreported withdrawals to using company funds for personal expenses, every transaction, every bank statement, every falsified report documented. My mother's face went pale. My father glanced nervously at Gerald as if hoping he'd turn the video off. I've transferred full ownership of Langston and Hartley, the company I co-founded with my husband to Sienna. She's the only one in this family who hasn't used our name for income, hasn't lied, and hasn't cloaked greed in family loyalty. Logan looked up, stunned. My mother jumped to her feet. Absolutely not. That company is my father's legacy, and now it belongs to the only one who still honors that legacy, I said, rising. I am the legal heir, and here is the ownership transfer notarized and filed. I placed the signed agreement and registration documents from Gerald in front of them. This is illegal, my father yelled, slamming the table. I'm still the acting CEO. I have rights. You have rights until you're forced to resign, I interrupted. And that's already underway. Here's your resignation letter. If you refuse to sign, all financial records, including misused company funds, will go to the SEC for investigation. I slid another file across. Inside are records of payments made to Riverfront Casino under a false name and invoices from the luxury hotel Mom used for her weekend conferences. No one said a word, Gerald added. Furthermore, if anyone attempts to interfere with this transfer or threaten the heir, the trust's asset protection clause will activate, transferring half the inheritance value to financial abuse recovery organizations. I looked at my mother. You used to say, I was too sensitive, but you were wrong. I was just too patient. My father's hand shook as he reached for the resignation letter. If I sign this, will you stay quiet? I don't want to hurt the family's name, I said. But if you keep trying to manipulate me, I won't hesitate to bring the truth to light. Richard looked at my mother. She said nothing. Her face was ghost-white, lips tightly pressed. Finally, he signed. I gathered the papers, looked at them one last time. From this point on, all shared family assets will be independently audited. All secondary credit cards are canceled. The company apartment is reclaimed. Discretionary funds are frozen, Logan muttered. Sienna, this has gone too far. I turned to him. No. Logan, this should have ended long ago. Today it's just being rewritten with the truth. The conference room door closed softly behind me. No slam, no drama. But I knew to them that sound echoed louder than any final word, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. 2 weeks after that fateful meeting, I officially took over as the new CEO of Langston and Hartley, the company my grandmother, Evelyn, had helped build from the ground up with my great-grandfather when it was just a small law office in Cambridge. Today, it's one of the most respected investment advisory firms in New England. And I, the granddaughter once dismissed as just the accountant, was now sitting in the top-floor office where my father's nameplate had hung for over 20 years. I didn't change much about the office's appearance. I only replaced my father's old portrait on the wall with one of my grandmother's paintings, a forest path lit by the last light of day. I think she would have liked that, but I didn't just take over the company, I did something else. Something I believe was my grandmother's unspoken wish. I founded the Evelyn Olsen Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing financial education for young people and counseling for those manipulated financially by their own families. Most of the foundation's budget came from 20 of the company's profits, something. I wrote into a board resolution which passed, though not without surprise, but I knew that once they understood the purpose, they'd come to appreciate it. That afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. Sienna, it's Mom. Your father just got out of the hospital. We need to talk. I took a few minutes before replying. Friday, 3:00 p.m., my office. They arrived on time. My mother looked as polished as ever, though she seemed tired. My father looked noticeably older, his face gaunt after a recent hospitalization for mild heart failure. The arrogance was gone, replaced maybe with fatigue from too many failed schemes. Sienna, my mother began. We're not here to ask for money, we just want to hear from you. Clearly. I sat across from them. 2 small envelopes rested on the table. I'm not trying to shut you out forever, but I can't be the family's financial fallback anymore. I slid the envelopes toward them. Inside were lists, independent financial counseling centers, and a treatment program for gambling and compulsive spending. I'm willing to pay for these if you're truly ready for a fresh start, but I won't write another check to patch over bad decisions. My mother hesitated. Do you think we're horrible people? I shook my head gently. I think you're people who never learned how to set boundaries, and worse, you never let me learn to set mine. My father spoke softly. I made mistakes, not once, many times. But seeing you here strong in control, maybe that's the smartest thing your grandmother ever did. I didn't respond, not because I wasn't moved, but because I've learned not to base my future on someone else's remorse. They left quietly. No hugs, no further asks. That evening, I returned to the foundation office where a group of college students was setting up for a seminar on recognizing financial abuse within families. I stood in the back of the room, quietly observing. No one realized I was the founder, and I liked it that way. Avery arrived late, carrying 2 bubble teas. Word is, Logan's younger sister just signed up to volunteer. I smiled. Good. At least the next generation still has hope. She handed me a paper website draft for the foundation. What do you want under the About Us section? I paused for a moment, then wrote, We believe family should never be a place where you fear your finances and real love never comes with a price tag. Reen nodded, eyes lighting up. Perfect. Your grandma would be proud. I looked out the window where the city lights shimmered like Christmas for the first time in years. I felt no tug of war between gratitude and guilt. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. And at last, I was living a life that was fully mine. I used to think blood ties were sacred, unchangeable, that no matter how many times you were hurt, you kept forgiving because they were family. But the truth is, some ties only exist to weigh you down. And if you're never brave enough to let go, you'll stay trapped in an endless loop of self-sacrifice. That fall, as golden leaves blanketed the path leading to Langston and Hartley's headquarters, I stepped into a new chapter. No more emergency calls, no more veiled texts about money, no more guilt each time. I said no to someone who once called me the good girl. I lived in a modest apartment near Boston, common. Nothing extravagant, but cozy enough that every night I came home I no longer felt lost. On my bookshelf were new photos, me, Avery and the Foundation's first team on a site visit in Vermont. Me and Logan sharing the stage for the first time at the company's restructuring announcement. Me and myself smiling into a mirror without pretending. One late evening, after a seminar on breaking toxic ties and blood relationships, Reen sat beside me, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. You think if your mom called again, would you answer? I stayed quiet for a moment, then shook my head. Not because I'm angry, but because I understand. Every time I open that door, I give them another chance to take what took me years to reclaim. Peace. Avery nodded, her eyes following the soft glow of the ceiling lights. Your family didn't lose you over money. They lost you because they never learned how to keep someone who they thought would never leave. Her words stayed with me into the next day when I was invited to speak at a youth conference for those hurt by their own families. I walked up to the podium without a long speech, just a few notes and a truth. I no longer hid. My name is Sienna, and maybe the first thing I want you to know is you are not selfish for choosing to protect yourself. The room went silent. I went on. I used to be my parents' bottomless wallet, the successful one. But behind closed doors were midnight calls, guilt trips. If you don't help, what will happen to us? I gave more than money. I gave my trust, time, and youth trying to hold together something called family peace. But I learned peace built on guilt never lasts. I looked down at the front row where Logan sat quietly. He gave me a small nod, silent agreement. And then I realized real family isn't who gave birth to you. It's who stays when you dare to live as your full self. That could be a college friend, a coworker who shares their lunch, or you who got back up not for anyone else but for yourself as. I stepped down. Many in the audience stood and applauded. Not because I was a CEO, but because I had once chosen to let go so I could begin again. That night, I sat alone at the foundation office watching the streetlights fade. On the desk was my grandmother's final handwritten letter. Never made public, dear. Sienna, if the day comes when you must choose between keeping your family and keeping yourself, remember, real family will never ask you to lose who you are. Choosing yourself isn't abandoning anyone. It's the only way you can be whole and truly give. And if you must go, walk toward peace. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer. Peace. Not something I was given, but something I learned to create, and for the first time in my life, I knew this for certain. I don't need anyone's permission to be happy. Sienna's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is set boundaries even with our own family. Blood doesn't equal kindness, and true love doesn't come with conditions. In a world where so many are manipulated under the guise of duty, Sienna chose to live by her values, rebuilding her life on truth and self-worth. She proved that happiness doesn't come from pleasing others, but from having the courage to be honest with yourself. What do you think about Sienna's choice? Would you have done the same in her shoes?